Welcome to Warehouse Automation Matters. I'm your host, Mary Hart, and I'm here today with Thomas Stearman, the Director of Industrial Engineering at UPS, to discuss pick velocity and why it's so important to warehouses. Welcome, Thomas. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mary.
I appreciate it. Before we dive into the nuts and bolts of warehouse automation and pick velocity, can you tell me a fun fact about yourself that most people might not know?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really have fun facts or hobbies about myself because I have three children of my own. So my entire life revolves around them. So I spend most nights at the ball field or on a volleyball court these days. So whether it be 5 days a week or seven, it's really what it all revolves around.
That is definitely a hobby in and of itself, is having the kids and managing their times and their schedules. I appreciate that completely. Can you tell me a little bit about your role at UPS and how you work within UPS in the warehousing industry?
Yeah, so I work on the supply chain solution side of UPS. So it's all about warehouse distribution. So my team, I'm the director of industrial engineering. We call our business unit global logistics and distribution. So it's all kind of the retail sector of things. So big box stores, and then really what our role is we have kind of our departments broken into really three categories. We have a solutions team that when business goes out for bid, we'll actually put a warehouse design together. We'll put pricing together, come up with the right automation, the right processes that matches whatever the customers need. And then from there, we have really an automation and a new business team that does the implementation. So we got a team that's really dedicated to bringing in new technology, doing proof of concepts with that, and then also really focused on implementing new business. And then from there, we also have what we kind of call a steady state engineering team that's really focused on continuous improvement, and then just forecasting and just day to day operations to make sure we're really being sustainable throughout the entire process.
Wonderful. And how did you get involved in the warehouse industry in the first place, Thomas?
That's a really good question. So what's I guess really what started was I was going to school, and ultimately a buddy of mine was asked me, he's like, "Hey, do you want to go work at UPS?" And I was like, "Sure, let's give it a try." And so I started there. I actually started on the warehouse floor as an operator while I was going to school, and then finished school and really got into industrial engineering and found out that I was gifted with the ability to be really good at designing warehouses for whatever reason. So it definitely wasn't something I had planned, but UPS has been really, really good to me. So it's found something that we're passionate about, and it's been fun.
I love to hear that. So, how long have you been with the company?
So I started when I was 19, so I guess it's been 16 years.
Oh,
So
wow, that's impressive.
yes,
So let's talk about pick velocity. For our listeners who might not be familiar, could you explain what pick velocity means to you and why it's crucial in warehouse operations?
yeah. So I think overall it's really how fast you can get items picked, and by fast I mean at the individual user level, what kind of PPHs are you hitting? But also comes through as the full flow of the warehouse of as a whole. What is your picking capacity, right? So a lot of our customers are coming to us and they've got capacities in mind, and they need different flexibility and things like that. And picking is a part of it, but it's also the entire warehouse flow. But pick velocity, in general, is really just improving your ability to be able to take the items from the point you receive the orders and then getting them ready for pack out.
Wonderful. And how does pick velocity at UPS impact your overall warehouse efficiency and customer satisfaction? Because we know that's most important is making sure customers are happy and get their orders on time.
Yeah, no, I think it plays a really critical role in customers, especially as ever since COVID, a lot of customers are really leaning into the B2B B2C side of things, and being able to be able to keep up with those demands, and between times where outside of Black Friday you're shipping much lower volumes depending on your customer, and then during that Black Friday period you've got to be able to ramp up to extreme numbers, and you've got to be able to have a solution in place that can do that. And really picking is kind of your first bottleneck in order to be able to do that.
That makes perfect sense. So, what strategies or methodologies have you implemented at UPS to improve pick velocity?
Yeah, good question. So I'd say the first thing we've done is on the digital side of things. So we've worked with our WMS partner, and even in manual environments, we've improved a lot of things by being able to batch pick, and then we utilize a warehouse execution system that really helps optimize those picks. So whether it be a unit pick and picking a lot of orders that are very similar in profile, and then even at the SKU level, that way you're able to go to location less time. So if you're able to go to location and pick, 10 orders that have the same item, you're able to get 10 units out of that one pick versus going to that location 10 times is huge, right? So that's kind of a first step. And then, some other ways we've done it is more on the physical automation side of things is where we've partnered with multiple partners with ASRS systems. So we've done, shuttle systems, we've done um, auto stores, racks to person systems. And then we've also utilized Locus Robotics a lot to help with that picking as well. So really being able to reduce that walk time during that time period and allow a lot of those systems have the capability to help optimize those picks and ultimately improve your pick efficiency. So by using things like Locus, we're able to 2 and 3 times improve our productivities in that area, and overall be able to reduce our labor dependency there. Picking is one of the least enjoyable jobs, right? There's a lot of walking involved when it comes to that. So, being able to optimize that is really a huge step in the automation area.
And how do the workers feel about the reduced walking? Hopefully, they find it makes a better quality of life for them.
Yeah, overall, I mean, our employees, we've actually seen a reduction in turnover ever since we started implementing a lot of automation. And a lot of it's to do with just overall being more enjoyable to work with, right? So, taking a cart and lugging that thing around the warehouse, for miles and miles a day, it gets old. And we would have a lot of turnover just because those jobs are just physically demanding, and ultimately, there's not a lot of satisfaction with that. Now, when working with systems like Locus, the user interface is really nice. So one of the things that at UPS that we're really proud of is that we have a really diverse workforce. So one of the key features that Locus has is being able to have kind of pre-programmed languages in there. So if at home you speak Spanish, when you come to work, you want to be able to utilize things that are in Spanish. So with Locus and on their tags, it's really nice because you can pre-program that with their card, and as they walk up to a bot, it updates and puts the entire screen in Spanish for them. So it just makes it a much more enjoyable time at work for these employees. So, like I said, like we've seen people really enjoy working with that, and systems like Locus and even some of our ASRS system, it's more ergonomic, and it just allows people to not have to like I said, load things around. And overall it's been a really big win for us.
Wonderful. I love to hear that. What are some of the top challenges that you and the pickers face when trying to increase pick velocity, and how have you addressed these challenges?
Yeah, I think picking is a big area of focus, but one thing you've got to be really careful of is not being solely focused on just picking, right? So a lot of times you'll bring in something like Locus, and you're doing really well in picking. Well, now you found your bottleneck is packing, and now you're stacking up totes at the pack stations. So you've got to make sure that as you increase your pick velocity, you've got to make sure that your other areas match that as well, so you can really focus on the entire flow of the warehouse and not just one area. Another challenge that you run into when bringing in technology is sometimes that can uncover some things that you in a manual environment don't necessarily surface themselves. So inventory accuracy is really important, right? So in a manual environment, you have the ability to kind of pick from the wrong location sometimes whenever you want. Well, when you use things like Locus and it tells you, hey, go to this location, that location's empty, well, then that's going to be a problem. So you got to make sure your inventory is right. So one of the benefits, when you utilize systems like this, is it does uncover some bad habits that you may have and things that you're going to improve. Is not a direct savings, but it's something that's going to kind of uncover itself as you're going through this. So one of those things as you bring in technology, you've got to really focus on make sure that your inventory accuracy is where it needs to be.
Absolutely important. And especially for customer satisfaction, you want to make sure they're getting the right orders of what they picked. Have you seen any specific increases in order accuracy numbers or percentages at all?
Oh yeah, for sure. So in times where you've got an employee that tries to memorize where things are and doesn't rely on the system as much and tries to rely on tribal knowledge. That employee takes a day off, and then now you're relying on that that tribal knowledge is not there, and using systems like this really help with that and really kind of streamline the process where it makes it easier, and just the overall ability just to fulfill orders just becomes more accurate, and it allows you to be able to handle the spikes and swings and volumes a lot better too. So you know we see a lot of shifts in profile, and especially a lot we bring in a lot of customers that are really growing, that are seeing 10, 20, 30% growth year over year. And when you're growing crazy like that, your profiles are going to change, and what your business is today is not what's going to be tomorrow. So you've got to put systems in place that can be able to handle flexibility.
And how important is flexibility, especially during peak, and pick velocity? What are you finding as the benefits for being able to be flexible and scalable during those ebbs and lows?
Ultimately, it's just our ability to be able to keep up with the customer, right? So we rely pretty heavily on forecasts, but we all know forecasts aren't always right. And just having solutions in place that allows you to be flexible, allows you to actually hit those numbers, right? So if if you've got a design that you put in place that was based on a set of operating parameters, and you put too fixed of an asset in place, and then there's a 20% change in something, a lot of times that'll break your design, and now you've got to completely rebuild your warehouse in order to be able to keep up with the change of business. When you put flexible solutions in place like Locus, it's going to allow you to adapt, especially with the model of Locus of being able to bring in peak bots. It allows you to bring in a peak bot and not be able to have and not have to carry that additional cost, for an entire year. Some other types of automation, you've really got to build it to that peak period, but you've got to carry that expense then through the entire year, in more of a capex type model. So the model that Locus provides really allows us to be flexible, not only with our customers, but even financially as well.
No, that's great. What emerging technologies and warehouse automation have you heard about, Thomas, that you're most excited about? And how do you think they might affect pick velocity at UPS?
I think AI is gonna play a big role in things, especially on the ability to do warehouse slotting, and some of those things, and being able to get better at some of that. Whereas today it's more of a manual type process, or at least the discovery of that. I think there's going to be even more and more ways we're going to utilize AI. It's really made a big jump in the last I'd say 12 months, and who knows what's going to be in the next 24. So I think that's going to be a big area. And then for us, a big area that we're focused in now, because we've partnered with a few different automation partners on the picking side, and now we're really focused on how do we improve the pack out side. So most of our labor, at least on the outbound side of things, is now diverted to pack out, whereas it used to be picking. So focusing on that in that area and doing some more right size packaging and sustainability is huge. A recent project that we did with Locus and pack size really showed that. So being able to really do a kind of a three-way partnership there and integration, not only were we able to improve our pick efficiency, but then we're also able to reduce our pack out labor and reduce the cube of what we're shipping out for a customer as well. So it's been a huge win, really within the four walls, but then also to our customers, right? So it's a great presentation to the end customer, and then the sustainability of it is just key. More and more of our customers, and within UPS as well, we want to be a sustainable company, and being able to do things like that is really important to us.
No, that's wonderful. Sustainability is huge, especially in this day and age. What lessons have you learned from your experience that could benefit other warehouse managers who might be listening to this, who are looking to improve their own pick velocity?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is make sure you have a culture where um, you're not penalizing people for taking risk, right? Like be open to risk and allow people to fail, right? Don't criticize them when they fail. Allow them to take those risks and really go on a limb. And really, I would also say is be careful not to go into analysis paralysis of you know doing months and months of data crunching. Like start small, figure out a good POC to go with, and then and just go after it. What you're going to learn from that POC is going to be a lot more than the months and months you sit behind a computer crunching numbers. So.
Makes perfect sense. And that proof of concept is so important. What advice would you give to someone who's just starting to explore automation by itself for their warehouse, meaning they're just using those manual processes of pushing carts around for miles in a warehouse?
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways to get into automation is with Locust, right? It's a very easy integration, especially in a brownfield environment where you kind of already have a warehouse, and you're kind of scared to completely do a full remodel. Locust can do really well on the greenfield side, but also brownfield. So being able to bring those in, and like I said, it's a relatively low risk. The team at Locus is really knowledgeable on integrating with multiple different WMSs, and it's a really good kind of first step in the door to automation.
Well, thank you. What's the one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember about improving pick velocity in their warehouse?
Uh, I'd say the main takeaway I would say is allow people, like, if you want to take the step in making a change, you got to allow people to really focus on it. One of the big things we do at UPS is we took our team, and we have done a lot of automation really over the last 5 years or so, but then we really stepped it up within the last 2 to 3 years, and that's because we took people and we allowed them to really focus on one thing, and then that's really driven some really good results for us. So and being focused on something that's scalable, right? So, like, don't try not to focus on something that's going to only affect one portion of one warehouse. Find something that's going to be flexible you can apply to multiple areas. Start small, and then you'll be able to expand that and grow from there.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Thomas, for joining me today on Warehouse Automation Matters. It was a great discussion, and thank you to our listeners. We're here to help you move what matters in your warehouse.